It was the evening of our ninth wedding anniversary when my husband, Ethan Hayes, brought his pregnant secretary home. With a calm, almost detached voice, he gave me instructions as if he were merely telling me about a change in dinner plans. Isabella is a picky eater, Ethan said, not meeting my eyes. From now on, I want you to make sure every meal is different for her. Also, she gets frightened at night and can't sleep alone. Pack up your things and move into the guest room. I didn't say a word. I simply turned and went to our bedroom, where I picked up the small suitcase I had already packed that afternoon. As I walked quietly toward the front door, our housekeeper tried to block my path, her face etched with concern. But Ethan just let out a cold, dismissive laugh. "Let her throw her tantrum," he said to the small group of his friends who had gathered. "She'll be crawling back within 3 days." Laughter filled the foyer behind me. They thought my departure was a joke, a temporary fit of pique. Right there in front of me, they made a casual wager for $1 million, certain that I wouldn't last a single night on my own. They imagined I would come back whimpering, begging Ethan to let me back into the life he had built around me. What they didn't know was that the car Ethan's own driver had arranged, at my quiet request, was already waiting for me just beyond the main gate. This time, I was truly leaving. Just as my hand touched the ornate handle of the front door, Ethan's voice cut through the air, sharp and cold. "Clara, read." I stopped. "Leave your lucky bracelet," he commanded. "Isabella has been having nightmares lately." That bracelet was a keepsake from my parents, the only thing I had left of them after they were gone. I turned to face him, a hot burn stinging the back of my eyes, but his face was a mask of indifference. "Name your price," he said, as if my grief and memory were commodities to be traded. After 9 years of a marriage where I had been made to feel lower than dust, how much was my dignity worth? I didn't bother to calculate. I only remembered what had happened the last time I had refused to lend Isabella my ski goggles. Ethan had stripped me of my winter clothes and left me shivering on the icy slope of the mountain until I'd relented. I walked back to Isabella, took off the bracelet, and gently slid it onto her wrist. Looking at her pale, triumphant face, I said quietly, "I hope the child in your belly comes into this world safely." "Clara," Ethan said, offering me what he must have considered a shred of grace, "as long as you behave, my child can be your child too." The moment those words left his mouth, the jade bracelet on Isabella's wrist suddenly slipped off, shattering on the marble floor. A sharp piece of the stone flew up and cut her leg. Ethan rushed over without a second's hesitation, lifting her into his arms as if she were made of glass. "Call the doctor!" He barked at the housekeeper, his voice tight with panic. The people around us all glanced at me with knowing smirks, enjoying the drama. In that moment, I realized it wasn't just them who found it amusing. I found it laughable, too. Only last night, I had collapsed from a heart attack, right here in this living room. Ethan had been getting dressed to take Isabella out to watch a meteor shower. Even as I lost consciousness, foaming at the mouth, he didn't pause. He simply stepped over my body. Before everything went dark, I heard him tell the housekeeper, "Disinfect the entire living room. Isabella is coming back tomorrow. I don't want her to smell anything unpleasant." Clenching the handle of my suitcase, I turned to leave again, but Ethan's hand clamped around my wrist in an icy grip. "Apologize," he said sharply. "What?" I started to ask, but before I could finish, he dragged me to my knees in front of Isabella. My knees landed on the scattered shards of jade, and blood immediately began to stain the white floor beneath me. Seeing the blood, Ethan grimaced and let go of my arm in disgust. "You deliberately dropped the bracelet and injured her," he accused. "Shouldn't you at least apologize?" Since marrying Ethan, the words "I'm sorry" had become my daily mantra. If the soup I made was too bland, I was sorry. If I sent him a text message to check if he was drinking too much at a business dinner, I was sorry. If I accidentally saw a text from Isabella on his phone, asking him to meet her at a hotel, I was truly sorry. Biting down hard on the inside of my cheek, I forced myself to stand and bow deeply to Isabella. I gave 3 formal, perfect apologies, each one lower than the last. Then I looked at Ethan and asked quietly, "Is that enough?" His eyes flicked to the trace of blood at the corner of my lips, his chest rising and falling with silent anger. Clara, he hissed, your precious grandfather isn't here to protect you anymore. So who are you putting on this pathetic act for? Before I could speak, the doctor arrived. Ethan shoved past me without another glance and led the physician straight to Isabella. While his entire world was focused on that woman, I walked quickly toward the gate. As I stepped out into the cool night air, I heard the sharp double beep of a car horn. A sleek silver car was waiting. I picked up my pace, but before the gates could swing fully open, two of Ethan's bodyguards appeared and forcibly dragged me back inside. In the study, Ethan had me tied to a chair. Then, he gave the cruelest order I could have imagined. He made someone from the medical staff who had arrived insert a thick needle into my arm, one that felt as wide as a child's finger. Through the half-open door, I overheard the doctor speaking to Ethan in a cautious tone. Mr. Hayes, although both your wife and Miss Davis share the rare H-negative blood type, your wife has a known history of heart disease. Forcing a blood draw under these conditions could easily trigger acute shock. I believe it would be safer to take Miss Davis to the hospital to treat her anemia there. There's no need to persuade me further, Ethan interrupted coldly. Your only responsibility is to ensure Isabella recovers. The rest is none of your concern. Hearing his footsteps approaching, I slowly closed my eyes. Does it hurt? Ethan asked, his voice suddenly gentle, a rare note of concern that felt more like a weapon than a comfort. Hold on a bit longer. It will be over soon. I turned my face away, too exhausted to respond. After 800 milliliters of blood had been drawn, my lips had turned a faint bluish purple. Suddenly, from the master bedroom, Isabella began to cough weakly. At the sound, Ethan immediately stopped the doctor from removing the needle and ordered a double draw. The doctor, now visibly sweating, warned Ethan that any more could be fatal. After a brief, chilling pause, Ethan replied with calm finality. Isabella is pregnant. The baby must come first. But the doctor began. I interrupted, my voice a weak whisper but firm. Go ahead. Just finish it, and then let me leave. Ethan stared at my pale face, his own eyes flashing with frustration. He opened his mouth, ready to scold me. Was I really going to keep making a scene over something so trivial? Was I seriously considering running away from home? But then, Isabella's soft voice floated out from the bedroom. Ethan, sweetheart. And just like that, he was gone. 2 days later, I woke up in a hospital bed, weak from shock and blood loss. The first thing I saw was Ethan, seated beside me, reviewing documents on a tablet. Our eyes met and held for a long moment. Without a word, he stood, brought over a bowl of porridge, and made a motion as if to feed me. I turned my head slightly. I'll do it myself, I said quietly. He watched in silence as I slowly finished half the bowl. Then he asked, Are you feeling unwell anywhere? I didn't answer his question. Instead, I said flatly, Please hand me my phone. Perhaps my tone was too distant because Ethan paused for a few seconds before calling the housekeeper to bring it. As I checked the screen and saw a long list of missed calls, Ethan suddenly asked, Who was calling you? He had never cared enough to ask a question like that before. I looked away and replied calmly, Someone you don't know. Ethan unbuttoned the top button of his shirt and looked down at me, his voice growing colder. Clara, how long are you planning to sulk like this? You act like a little princess. Do you really think the world revolves around you? Once, when Ethan was angry, I would have immediately reflected on my own faults and tried to comfort him. But now, I simply pointed to his phone, which was vibrating on the bedside table. Isabella is calling, I said with no expression. At the mention of her name, Ethan's face softened into a smile. Without another word, he left the room and stepped into the hallway to take the call. No sooner had he gone than my own phone rang. I answered, and before I could say a word, a worried voice came through the speaker. You promised you would come find me, Clara. Have you changed your mind? No, I haven't, I whispered. Something unexpected happened. Unexpected? What happened? No, this isn't right. I'm flying back. I interrupted him, my voice gentle as I lowered my eyes. Just give me a few more days. When Ethan returned to the room, I had just ended the call. he noticed something that seemed to startle him: the faint curve of a smile on my lips. It had been so long since he had seen me smile that it made his chest feel strangely heavy. But he had promised Isabella he would go back soon to sing a lullaby for her and the baby. So he said nothing, assuming it had been one of my female cousins calling again. Since our marriage, I had stopped seeing friends. The only people who still reached out were relatives. Grabbing his papers, Ethan turned away without meeting my eyes. "There is something I need to take care of at the office," he said coldly. "I'll come back tomorrow." But he didn't return the next day, nor the day after that. Instead, thanks to mutual acquaintances, I kept receiving videos and pictures of him and Isabella together. They went to parties, dinners, and social events. He looked like a man newly in love, eager to show her off to the world. On the day I was discharged from the hospital, Ethan posted a collage of photos on his social media. In the golden light of a sunset, he stood on a hot air balloon, holding Isabella's blushing face as he kissed her deeply. I commented beneath the post, "Wishing you both a lifetime of happiness and a beautiful baby soon." 10 minutes later, Ethan called. I didn't answer. Half an hour later, I finished the discharge paperwork on my own. As I walked past the entrance of the maternity department, I saw Ethan standing beside Isabella. I overheard one of the young nurses at the front desk speaking sweetly to her. "Mrs. Hayes, your husband really adores you. He's always by your side every time you come in. Even when you get an ultrasound, he insists on warming the gel with his hands first so it won't feel cold on your skin." Around them, other expectant mothers turned to look with admiration in their eyes. Almost without thinking, I gently placed a hand over my own flat belly. I remembered that once, not so long ago, a child had been growing there. That memory pulled me back to the day of the accident. The heavy bleeding, the miscarriage. I had sobbed as I called Ethan in a video chat, desperate for some comfort. Instead, what I saw was Isabella, completely unclothed, lounging in his bed. Her voice had been playful and cruel. "Mrs. Hayes," she'd said with a smirk. "Ethan lost a game to me earlier, so as punishment, I tied him to the bed. Can I help you with something?" I said nothing. I simply ended the call. Less than a minute later, Ethan called me back himself. He held a teary-eyed Isabella in his arms and shouted at me with cold fury. "You are pathetic, Clara," he'd barked. "You're small-minded and stupid. I honestly wonder how someone like you can do anything right. You couldn't even hold on to your own child." Then he added, "People like you should just be run over by a truck and be done with it." The memory faded as I tried to walk away quietly, not wanting to be noticed. But Ethan saw me. His expression turned cold as he stepped toward me. "What are you standing there for?" he asked sharply. I instinctively lowered my eyes and replied softly, "I wasn't following you. I really just happened to run into you here. I'm sorry to disturb you." "Wait," Ethan said, his brows furrowed. Isabella's expression darkened with a flash of jealousy. Tightening her grip on his arm, she turned to me with a sugary smile. "Mrs. Hayes," she said cheerfully, "I really appreciate the blood you donated for me. Without it, I'd probably still be lightheaded right now. Ethan, could you please ask her to come home with us? Just for a little while, pretty please?" Ethan chuckled and lightly tapped the tip of her nose. "My sweet and kind Bella," he said fondly. "Whatever you say goes." Since I had to go back to the house to collect my things anyway, I didn't refuse Isabella's so-called kindness. In the spacious black car, I soon noticed exactly what Isabella had surely intended for me to see: a lace undergarment tucked between the seats, still bearing faint signs of use. "Oh dear," Isabella gasped with mock surprise. "How did this end up here, Ethan? I thought you said you had thrown it out already." She bit her lip, feigned embarrassment, and leaned into his chest, lightly hitting him with her fists. Ethan laughed softly and apologized, saying it was all his fault, all while stealing glances at me to gauge my reaction. But I gave him nothing. I showed no anger, no jealousy. I simply stared out the window. That same heavy, stifling feeling I'd had back in the hospital room came creeping back into my chest. "Clara!" Ethan snapped, his voice sharp and tinged with irritation. "You've been staring at your phone since we got in the car. Who are you talking to? Your cousin? Or someone else I don't even know?" I had just finished booking my flight. I turned off the screen and replied calmly, I was just reading the news. But that only seemed to irritate him more. The crease in his brow deepened, and without warning, he snatched the phone from my hands. What's the passcode? He demanded. My birthday, I said. We had been married for 9 years. The 6 digits were painfully simple, yet he still couldn't unlock it. He tried again and again until the screen locked from too many failed attempts. The rest of the ride was silent. When the car pulled up to the house, Ethan rushed to help Isabella, who was struggling with a bout of pregnancy nausea, to the master bedroom. He ordered the cook to make her favorite dishes. But when he came back downstairs and saw me walking quietly toward the guest room, he hesitated for a moment. Then, he turned to the cook and said, Make a few of my wife's usual dishes, too. Set the table for 3 tonight. Upstairs in the guest room, I opened my suitcase only to find all my clothes shredded. Every single piece had been cut to ribbons. But thankfully, the documents and passport I had hidden in the inner pocket were untouched. Just as I gathered my important things, ready to leave for good, Isabella appeared at the door. She was holding a small black bottle in her hand. Her eyes swept over me with disdain. Well, Clara, she sneered, I have to admit I didn't think you could endure so much. You've been completely humiliated, made into a laughingstock among the upper circles, and still, you cling to the Hayes family like some pathetic stray who can't take a hint. She gave a mocking shrug. Of course, it makes sense. Your grandfather from the Reed side just passed away last month. Without him, you lost your biggest shield. No wonder you're hanging on to Ethan for dear life. He's the only straw left for you to grasp. Suddenly, her expression shifted into one of giddy amusement. By the way, do you know why Ethan refused to take you to the hospital to see your grandmother for the last time? When you were crying and begging for him to fly you there in the helicopter? She pulled out her phone and turned the screen toward me. It was a photo of him kissing her on a beach at sunset. It was because he had already promised to take me to the beach that evening. This photo, this kiss, that's us, right around that time. With a loud slap, I knocked the phone from her hand. I had had enough. In one swift motion, I lunged forward and wrapped my hands around her throat. The bottle slipped from Isabella's grasp and fell to the floor. Instantly, the sharp stench of gasoline filled the air. In the chaos of our struggle, Isabella, clearly flustered and desperate, lit a match. Within seconds, the fuel caught fire. Thick black smoke billowed upward and the room was engulfed in flames. I had only recently been discharged from the hospital. The smoke quickly overwhelmed me, draining all the strength from my body. I collapsed to the floor, unable to move. Through the roaring fire, I heard Ethan's voice shout my name. Clara! Then came the shouts of the staff trying to hold him back. Sir, it's too dangerous inside. Please wait for security to bring the extinguishers. Move! Clara is still in there. Ethan didn't hesitate. He shoved past them and ran straight into the burning house. But what he didn't expect was to find Isabella inside as well. Ethan, please, help me, Isabella cried weakly. Before she could finish her plea, Ethan scooped her up in his arms without a second thought. He didn't even glance in my direction as he turned and carried her out of the flames. Half an hour later, after seeing Isabella safely settled and comforted, Ethan searched the entire estate. But I was gone. That night at the airport, after sending off a package, I boarded a flight to the United Kingdom, coughing from the smoke that still clung to my lungs. Just before takeoff, I received a message from Ethan. This isn't a game of hide and seek. Isabella's prenatal appointment is tomorrow at 10 o'clock. You should come and get your lungs checked too. I didn't reply. Instead, I removed the SIM card from my phone and turned it off. Ethan, from this moment on, we are done. Forever. The next day at the hospital, Isabella asked softly, her eyes full of fragile hope, Ethan, is our baby going to be all right? Ethan immediately pulled her close, his tone gentle as he answered, The doctor says the baby is perfectly healthy. Yesterday's incident didn't cause any harm. Isabella gave a relieved smile. That's such a comfort. You looked so serious the whole time we were here, not saying a word. I thought something had gone terribly wrong. Her words, though seemingly innocent, caught Ethan off guard. Suddenly, a memory rose unbidden in his mind. The way I had looked at him through the flames, my eyes cold, my expression unreadable. He frowned and opened his inbox again. Still no response from me, not even a single word. Back then, even when he ignored me, I always came running when he called. I never once turned him down, but now I had learned how to walk away. He gave a silent, bitter laugh. Then, gently guiding Isabella out of the obstetrics department, he accompanied her to lunch, saw her safely home, and returned to the office. As soon as he entered, his assistant rushed to report, "Sir, Mr. Hayes Sr. has returned from abroad and has called for an immediate meeting with the full executive board. Everyone is gathering in conference room 1. Without missing a beat, Ethan turned toward the meeting room and casually instructed, "Pick out a few of the newest designer handbags and some trendy jewelry." The assistant nodded quickly. "Yes, Mr. Hayes. I'll have them sent to Miss Davis's apartment." Ethan paused mid-step, pinched the bridge of his nose, and corrected him. "Send them to the Reed family estate." As far as he was concerned, once I had moved out of the villa, the only place I could possibly have gone was my family's old home. 1 week later, in the dead of night, after finishing a demanding project, Ethan returned home at last. But as he walked into the living room, he was met with a slender silhouette curled up on the couch, draped in a silk nightgown. "Clara," he began wearily, "how many times have I told you? I'll come home when I'm done with work. You don't need to—" He stopped short. It wasn't me, it was Isabella. Caught in his cold, unblinking stare, Isabella gave a soft shiver, her voice trembling with both fear and sorrow. "Ethan, Claire hasn't come home in days. I sent her so many messages to apologize, but she never replied. Maybe I should move out." Her voice cracked, and it looked like she might cry at any moment. Ethan furrowed his brow and pulled her into his arms, offering a quick, half-hearted kiss on her forehead. "Take care of yourself. Don't overthink it." Then he said, in a low voice, "Whether Clara accepts it or not, from now on, this is your home, yours and the baby's." Half an hour later, Ethan stood alone on the balcony, his robe loose around him, a cigarette between his fingers. Smoke curled up into the night as he stared into the distance. He hadn't smoked in a long time, but that night, for reasons he couldn't explain, the craving came back strong. As if guided by something he couldn't control, he scrolled through the contacts on his phone. At the very bottom of the list, he found my name. His thumb hovered over the call button for a long time, but in the end, he didn't make the call. Instead, after finishing 2 cigarettes, he sent a message. It read, "Clara, tomorrow is Grandfather Hayes's 80th birthday. I strongly suggest you behave yourself at the celebration. Don't cause trouble for Isabella or the baby." On the day of the celebration, Ethan arrived with Isabella on his arm, the two of them drawing attention as if they were the perfect couple. Only when Grandfather Hayes himself entered the banquet hall did Ethan finally let go of Isabella's hand and walk over to accompany the guest of honor, helping greet important guests. The old man turned and asked pointedly, "Why isn't Clara with you?" Ethan pressed his lips into a firm line. "Grandfather," he defended me, "she has been working tirelessly on your birthday gift for days. I saw how exhausted she was, so I told her to rest a bit. She'll arrive a little later." 2 hours passed in the blink of an eye. The evening had reached its peak, the grand gift presentation and birthday wishes. Still, I had not appeared. Ethan's sense of unease grew heavier by the minute. He stepped away to a quiet corner and pulled out his phone, dialing my number. "The number you have dialed is currently unavailable." He called again and again, only to hear the same automated message. Just then, a courier entered the hall holding 3 beautifully wrapped packages. They were from me. All eyes turned to Grandfather Hayes as he opened the first box with a gentle smile. Inside was a stunning embroidered tapestry of 100 deities, bestowing blessings for longevity. It was clear to everyone that this piece had taken months of meticulous work, likely stitched by hand. Moved, Grandfather Hayes's eyes glistened with tears as he reached for the second gift. He opened the box slowly. Inside lay the family heirloom, a set of jewels that had been gifted to me by his wife when Ethan and I got married. The moment the light struck the jewelry, the room fell completely silent. In their world, for a woman to return an heirloom meant only one thing. Everyone knew it. Before the old man could speak, Ethan, his face darkening with rage, stepped toward the third package, fists clenched. Just as I had expected, he personally opened the final box, his hands trembling slightly. It was large, but the contents were sparse. Only two things lay inside: a divorce agreement and a medical report. Ethan froze. Divorce? I wanted a divorce. That couldn't be true. But as his eyes dropped to the report and read what was written, his face turned pale. The next sound was the sharp crack of a slap. Grandfather Hayes had stood up and struck Ethan hard across the face in front of everyone. "You monster!" the old man shouted, his voice trembling with rage. "Look what you have done! If I had known this would happen, I would never have let you marry Clara. You have ruined her life." As the old man wavered, nearly fainting, the family rushed to support him and lead him away. One by one, the guests quietly left the room. Ethan remained where he was, unmoving, staring at the divorce papers in his hand. No one knew how long he stood there. Eventually, his expression turned blank. Slowly, silently, he tore the divorce agreement into shreds. He ignored Isabella's anxious cries behind him, took the car keys from the driver, and drove straight to the Reed family estate. But when he arrived, the house was dark. He rolled down the window, parked by the garden gate, and lit one cigarette after another. He smoked all night. By morning, his throat was raw and sore, his voice gone. Still, not a single light came on inside the house. 5 days after the birthday celebration, he finally learned that I had left the country. Left the country. Was I really that desperate to avoid him? It was just one mistake. A mistake he told himself every man in the world had made. Why did Clara get to walk away just like that? Why did she get to decide it was over? He would not accept it. He could not. After tracking down my new address overseas, Ethan booked the next available flight. He didn't go home. He didn't pack a bag. He left directly from his office and went straight to the airport. Just as he was about to check in, Isabella appeared in tears. "Ethan!" she cried, her voice trembling with emotion. "Are you really going to leave me and the baby behind?" Ethan glanced at her growing belly, his expression unreadable. He reached out and gently patted her head, speaking in a calm and steady voice. "I have already asked my assistant, Mr. Liu, to prepare a new place for you. You can move in today." As soon as she heard this, Isabella's tears flowed even more uncontrollably. "I would live in a garbage dump if it meant staying close to you," she sobbed. "But our baby is innocent, Ethan. If Clara truly loved you, she would treat our child as her own. Instead, she ruined your grandfather's birthday banquet and embarrassed you in front of the whole Hayes family and all those guests. A woman like that." Before Isabella could finish her tirade, Ethan cut her off sharply, his face turned to ice. "And what right do you have to judge my wife?" He looked down at her with clear disappointment. "Isabella, I once thought you were sensible, but clearly you have forgotten your place." A staff member handed him his boarding pass, and Ethan took it without looking away from her. His voice remained flat and resolute. "No matter how many children I have outside of my marriage, Clara will always be the only woman I call my wife. Also, make sure you remove all your belongings from the villa before you leave. I don't want Clara coming back and seeing anything that might upset her." Isabella stood frozen for a moment, tears streaking down her cheeks. Then she let out a bitter laugh and called out after him, "Ethan, you really are more naive than I ever imagined. You think Clara will come back after what you put her through?" They say no one understands a woman better than another woman. But Ethan, already striding away, paid no attention to her words. He believed he knew his wife. For the past 9 years, no matter how angry Clara had been with him, he had always managed to win her back. A heartfelt apology, a few thoughtful gifts, and she would forgive him. But this time felt different. This time, she had printed out divorce papers. He knew that the usual gestures would not be enough. After much thought, the moment he landed, he headed straight to a tattoo studio. He pulled out a design he had received from me 5 years ago and handed it to the artist. "I'm in a hurry," he said. "Don't use anesthesia." 7 hours later, Ethan walked out of the studio, his white shirt soaked in blood. Without resting, he went on to purchase a luxury gift worth millions and 999 pure white roses. After nearly 48 hours without sleep, Ethan drove himself to a vineyard estate on the outskirts of London. On the highway, he kept running through his apology in his mind, rehearsing every word and every gesture. But no matter how many times he practiced, the first thing he wanted to say to me was always the same. "Clara," he told himself, "I missed you so much." At last, Ethan found me, miles away in a foreign land. But the moment he saw me, the flowers fell from his hands. The sun was low on the horizon, casting a golden glow across the vineyard. I was standing in the arms of another man, tall and handsome, my face lit with a smile Ethan had never seen before, relaxed, carefree. I was laughing playfully as we fed each other sweet, freshly picked grapes. Ethan never got the chance to say those words he had held onto for so long. Instead, stunned and speechless, he asked one thing. "Who is he?" Feeling my body stiffen slightly, the man beside me tightened his embrace. Then he spoke with a casual, steady tone. "You must be Ethan. I've seen your wedding photos with Clara. I have to say, you look worse in person than in the pictures." Seeing me chuckle softly at his teasing, Ethan felt something in his chest crack. He clenched his fists so tightly that his fingernails cut into his palms. "Since you came all this way," the man continued, "I suppose I should introduce myself properly. I'm Liam." "Liam," Ethan interrupted. "Now I remember. You're the son of the Reed family's former driver, the one who was kicked out by Clara's grandmother for stealing. The ungrateful brat." Liam raised an eyebrow, clearly unfazed by the insult, but I frowned, protective. "Ethan, you're wrong. Liam is not the person you make him out to be. And besides, why are you even here? This is private property. You had no right to enter without permission. What you're doing is trespassing." Hearing the firm tone of my voice, Ethan realized I was trying to send him away. His expression darkened instantly. For a moment, he completely forgot he was there to persuade me to come home, not to start another fight. "Clara," Ethan said impatiently, "I came all this way to find you myself. Please stop acting like a child. Just come home with me." I looked at him like he had lost his mind. "Home?" I asked, my voice calm but laced with disbelief. "Did you get into a car accident and damage your brain, Ethan? We are already divorced. Or did you not see the divorce papers with my signature on them?" The chance that the documents had gotten lost in the mail was slim, but not impossible. I was about to offer to print another copy and send him on his way when he spoke again, his voice full of arrogance and certainty. "I tore up those ridiculous papers the minute I saw them," Ethan said flatly. "Clara, I know you're angry. I know it's about Isabella, but I have already handled the situation. I promise, from now on, she will never show up in front of you again." He stepped forward quickly, raising his hand as if to touch my face, the one he had claimed to miss day and night. But before he could reach me, I pushed him back firmly. My voice remained quiet and steady. "Mr. Hayes, when the Reed family was in trouble, only the Hayes family extended a helping hand. Marrying you was my way of repaying that debt. For 9 years, I did my best to return that kindness, and now Isabella is carrying your child. The Hayes family finally has an heir. I sincerely wish the three of you happiness and peace." By the time I finished, someone as shrewd as Ethan could no longer pretend he didn't understand. I was determined to walk away from him for good. Panic flooded his face. "My love, why are you saying things like this?" Ethan asked, his voice cracking. "Are you telling me that all these 9 years with me, they were only to repay a favor? Do you expect me to believe such a weak excuse?" Of course he didn't believe it. If I had never loved him, why would I cling to his arm every morning before he left for work, pouting until he kissed my cheek? If I had never cared, why would I have cried myself blind the night he went into surgery for an appendix, refusing to leave the hospital no matter how many people tried to comfort me? The truth was, I had loved him deeply, so deeply that anyone with eyes could see how completely I had given my heart to him. And what did he do in return? The more love I showed, the more obedient and understanding I became, the more cruelly he trampled on my dignity. He forgot that the human heart is made of flesh, not stone. Pain repeated often enough becomes numbness, and numbness turns into the kind of calm that no longer seeks to love or be loved. Ethan forced a crooked smile, one that looked more painful than crying. His eyes were bloodshot as he stared at me. Clara, he said in a low voice, I really didn't know that Isabella's presence hurt you so much. What happened between us was just a drunken mistake. I brought her home only because I felt responsible. Once she gives birth, I'll arrange for her to move abroad. Would that be enough? I shook my head without hesitation. Ethan, I don't care what you and Isabella are to each other. What matters is that I have started a new life here. I will not go back with you. Please leave. Ethan began to shout, his frustration boiling over. What new life? But before he could finish, the room began to spin. He hadn't slept for 2 days, and he was still bleeding from the fresh tattoo. His body couldn't take any more. The world went black as he collapsed. When Ethan opened his eyes again, it was already 11 at night. He turned his head and saw a glass of water on the nightstand, left by the housekeeper. Mistaking it as a sign of care from me, he smiled weakly and dragged himself out of bed. Ignoring his own discomfort, he searched the house, hoping to find me. He climbed the spiral staircase slowly, every step damp with sweat. But when he finally reached the rooftop terrace, what he saw made his heart seize in pain. There I was, wrapped in Liam's embrace, lost in a long and intimate kiss. Ethan froze, his face as pale as paper. In one furious motion, he lunged forward, grabbed Liam by the collar, and growled through clenched teeth. What do you think you're doing to Clara? At this point, Ethan could no longer lie to himself. He could no longer pretend that Liam was just the friendly neighbor I grew up with. Who gave you permission to touch my wife? Ethan shouted, his voice sharp with fury. Liam let out a laugh, calm but mocking. Your wife, Ethan? Have you ever truly treated Clara like she was your wife? Have you ever cherished her like she deserved? Ethan started, but before he could finish, Liam, always known for his fiery temper, landed a hard punch square on the left side of Ethan's face. Listen here, Hayes, Liam growled. If Clara weren't so kind, I would have thrown a lowlife like you to the wolves outside this estate a long time ago. She's my fiancée now, and I don't care how shamelessly you keep showing up, pestering her like some desperate ghost. She will never look at you again. Ethan froze, his raised fist slowly falling to his side as he turned to me in disbelief. Is that true? He asked, his voice trembling. Clara, it hasn't even been a month since we separated, and you've already agreed to marry someone else? What I didn't tell him was that the day I found out Isabella was pregnant, I had already accepted Liam's proposal over a video call from across the ocean. He had loved me since we were children. His proposal was sincere and solemn, and I had nodded quietly, knowing my answer without hesitation. Now, I simply leaned lazily against Liam's broad shoulder, offering Ethan a faint, amused hum in response. Ethan looked at me as if I had lost my mind, his voice cracking with disbelief. Clara, are you insane? You are my wife. I never agreed to a divorce, and yet you turn around and throw yourself into another man's arms? How could you do this to me? Why not? I tilted my head slightly, blinking slowly with feigned innocence. Since when did your approval mean anything to me, Ethan? You have always thought far too highly of yourself. This will be the last time I say it. You mean nothing to me. Absolutely nothing. It is over between us. Completely. With that, I ignored the stunned, broken look on Ethan's face. I laced my fingers with Liam's and turned away, resuming our conversation under the moonlight as if nothing had happened. No one knew when Ethan left the estate. No one asked, and no one cared. But instead of returning to his home country, he bought an apartment in a high-rise overlooking the vineyards nearby. From there, he could see the estate from afar. Every day, his schedule was the same. Video conferences with his management team back home, and then a visit to the estate gate. Each time he came, he brought fresh flowers, never the same bouquet twice. Sometimes it was something I had once mentioned in passing, something I had hoped for years ago but never received. But I never acknowledged him. I didn't change a single thing in my routine for him. 9 years in a marriage built on compromise and disappointment had taught me a valuable lesson. A woman should never bend her life to fit a man's shadow. I worked when I needed to. I went out when I wanted to. The world was vast, and my only responsibility was to be happy. As for Ethan, I suspected his persistence had more to do with his father. Mr. Hayes Sr. had always been fond of me. He likely pressured Ethan to stay and beg for my forgiveness. So I picked up the phone and called Mr. Hayes myself. I told him I had a fiancée now and a new life ahead of me. I asked him not to make Ethan waste his time and energy chasing after something that no longer existed. But even after that call, Ethan remained for an entire month. He stood outside the estate day after day just to catch a glimpse of me from behind his car window. It was Liam who finally lost his patience. One night, after we returned from a party, we saw Ethan from a distance. He stood under a street lamp, holding yet another bouquet of white roses. The moment I stepped out of the car, the night sky erupted with a shower of colorful fireworks. Liam knew those fireworks well. He had watched that old proposal video of Ethan's more times than he cared to admit. Back then, I had been young and dazzled, swept away by the lights and promises, and I had said yes with a heart full of joy. Seeing my attention momentarily drawn by the display, Liam's insecurities boiled over. He stormed toward Ethan, furious, and launched into a full-blown fight. "Ethan!" he shouted. "You shameless bastard! All you ever do is hover around hoping my fiancé will give you one more look. You're like some sticky gum that won't go away. 30 years old and still acting like a pathetic leech," Ethan snarled back. "And what does that make you? Clara and I were together for 9 years. If she hadn't been injured in that car accident, if she hadn't lost the ability to have children, I never would have let Isabella keep the baby. Never." "You don't get it," Ethan went on, his face twisted with bitterness. "Clara is only with you because she misunderstood me. She thinks I cheated, thinks I don't love her anymore. That's the only reason she settled for you, the lifelong backup. But once I calm her down and explain everything, she'll break off the engagement and come back to me." Liam's face darkened with a cold laugh. He swung his fist and knocked Ethan to the ground. When I lost my baby in the car accident, it was Liam who dropped everything and rushed to my side. He stayed with me day and night, never once changing his clothes, caring for me until I was well enough to leave the hospital. And where was Ethan during all this? He claimed to be overwhelmed with work, but in reality, he had bought 2 tickets to Prague. While I was recovering from trauma and grief, he was strolling hand in hand with Isabella through every street of that romantic city, dining, laughing, and playing tourist as though nothing else in the world mattered. No matter how hard I tried to stop them, the 2 men eventually ended up in a heated fight. They were locked in such an intense scuffle that they failed to notice a police car pulling up nearby. 2 foreign officers stepped out, and one of them exchanged a brief look with Ethan before quickly intervening. Without asking questions, they bundled the 3 of us into a patrol vehicle and drove us straight to a nearby hospital. Once there, despite my obvious concern for Liam, I was inexplicably placed in Ethan's hospital room. It was then I realized everything that had happened that night had been orchestrated by Ethan. Every move, every detail. It had all been a carefully laid trap. And all for one purpose: to get me alone. I looked at him, half in disbelief, half in amusement. "Was all this really necessary?" I asked, my voice tinged with sarcasm. Ethan, lying there with 2 broken ribs, gave me a sheepish smile, his eyes red with emotion. Then, his voice quiet but deliberate, he said, "Clara, I miss you." He paused, swallowing hard. "I miss you so much it's driving me mad." As the doctor walked in to treat his injuries, I happened to notice the tattoo on Ethan's chest. It was of a sun, a moon, and a cluster of stars. That design was mine. I had drawn it myself when I was pregnant. A symbol of our little family. I remembered what Ethan had said back then when I proudly showed it to him. "A moon?" He'd scoffed. "You really think you're good enough to be that?" Now, back in the hospital room, Liam had stepped out for a moment. Ethan seized the opportunity to move closer. He clutched my wrist tightly, refusing to let go. "Clara," he said, his voice trembling, "I want to apologize to you properly. I am so sorry, my love. Everything that happened was my fault. I will do everything I can to make it up to you. I just need your forgiveness." Before I could respond, his phone rang. It was Isabella. Without hesitation, Ethan answered and put her on speakerphone. "Ethan, help me, please. It's your assistant, Mr. Liu. He barged into the apartment with some men. They brought me to a hospital. They're trying to take our baby. Ethan, please, do something." Her cries were wild, desperate, almost too painful to hear. But Ethan remained still, not a single flicker of concern on his face. He just kept smiling at me. Then he said, "Isabella, I already know you drugged me that night. That child cannot stay. As for the posts you had paid people to spread online, those lies about my wife being infertile, I've had them all erased. Every last one." His voice dropped lower and colder. "And for that, you will pay. When the surgery starts, the doctor will not give you anesthesia. And after this, you will never have children again." There was a stunned silence on the line. Then Isabella began sobbing uncontrollably, her voice broken with terror. "Mr. Hayes, please, please, I was out of my mind. I wasn't thinking clearly. Punish me however you want. I beg you, but please, don't hurt the baby. Please, Ethan, please, no, no." Ah! Her scream cut through the room like a blade. I flinched instinctively, blinking hard. Ethan noticed the change in my expression and quickly ended the call. Then, with shaking hands, he took mine and gently placed it against his pale cheek. Looking up at me with tear-filled eyes, he whispered, "Clara, I'll have them send you the full video of the surgery later. After you see it for yourself, maybe, just maybe, you can forgive me, even if it's only a little." He looked so hopeful, so vulnerable, as though even a sliver of forgiveness would mean the world. I slowly withdrew my hand. Looking into his eyes, I said calmly, "This hospital has a very good psychiatric department. You should go see someone right away." Ethan gave me a weak, almost tragic smile. "All right," he said. "I'll do whatever you say." In his mind, Ethan thought about all the things he had done wrong over the past 9 years. The weight of his mistakes was crushing, endless, but he had finally awakened to the truth. He was ready, he believed, to spend the rest of his life making amends. He was still clinging to that hope when, 3 days later, I married Liam in a grand and joyous ceremony. When Ethan got wind of the news, he drove like a madman, racing through traffic to reach the church. But by the time he arrived, hair disheveled and heart pounding, the white-haired pastor had just finished reciting the final vows. He heard it with his own ears. Wearing a flowing white gown, I turned to Liam with a radiant smile and said those 3 words clearly and without hesitation. "I do." "No, Clara, you can't marry him," Ethan shouted. The words had barely left his mouth when he collapsed to his knees on the vibrant red carpet, as though struck by lightning. The cold and composed CEO everyone once feared now looked like a stray dog, drenched and abandoned in the rain, trembling and broken. His voice rasped as he pleaded, "Please, my love, we don't have to get divorced. I never truly wanted to leave you. I'm begging you, don't marry another man." I stared at him from above, my gaze filled with undisguised contempt. Calmly, I replied, "Ethan, out of respect for the red envelope your father sent me as a wedding gift, I will overlook your disgraceful interruption. But this ceremony, my wedding to Liam, is not open to you. So please return to wherever you came from." His tears began to fall. They streamed down his face unchecked, and his voice cracked with desperation. "Clara, I swear I've changed. If you would just give me one last chance, I promise, I'll be different. I'll be the man you deserve. Since you left, I've thought about you every single day. Even in my dreams, I see the way you used to smile at me, the kindness you once showed me. Clara," he choked out, "I love you. I love you more than anyone else ever could." As if he had lost all sense of time and place, Ethan shouted his love for me in front of everyone, letting it pour out like a river that had long been dammed. His whole body trembled. The veins in his forehead bulged with emotion. Suddenly, he tore open his black shirt, exposing the deep scar that wrapped around the moon-shaped tattoo on his chest, still raw and bleeding. "You are my moon," he cried. "Tell me what you want, and I will give it to you. Anything. Just please, don't leave me." I couldn't help it. I laughed, not cruelly, just quietly, with a hand to my mouth. Ethan froze, stunned by my reaction. He looked at me as though he couldn't comprehend what had just happened. Meeting his vacant gaze, I spoke softly, like a breeze on a quiet morning. "Ethan, I already have someone who truly loves me, and I love him back. That man is my husband. His name is Liam. As for you, I added with a smile, even if every man on this earth disappeared, I would still never choose you. Then I turned away. I let Liam slide a 9-carat diamond ring onto my finger. The cheers echoed through the church as I accepted him, my cheeks slightly flushed with joy. Ethan could only watch in silence, as if the blood in his veins had turned to ice. Liam took my hand, and together we walked past Ethan. He lifted me up in his arms without hesitation, carrying me like a princess toward the waiting honeymoon car. My heart was light, my smile carefree. But behind me, Ethan, left in the dust of my departure, did something that no one could have ever imagined. He grabbed the long silver cake knife from a nearby table in a flash, his eyes wild and bloodshot. "Clara!" he screamed, his voice cracking. "You're only doing this because you're afraid of being hurt again. But that's all right. I'll show you how real my heart is." And without a pause, he plunged the knife into his own chest, his body convulsed with pain as blood soaked through his shirt. "Look at me, Clara," he wailed. "This is my heart that never stopped loving you. Please, just turn around just once. Look at my heart. See what is left of me." His cries echoed through the church like a wounded animal's howl, raw and heartbreaking. But I never turned back. I nestled into Liam's chest with a sweet smile and said playfully, "Darling, that lunatic is terrifying. Please, just take me away." Liam didn't even glance back. He carried me straight out of the church, placed me gently in the passenger seat of the sleek sports car, and leaned in with a grin. "Let's run away together," he whispered. "Yes," I answered with a smile, resting my head against his shoulder. Then he stepped on the gas, and together we raced off toward the life I had always dreamed of, toward real happiness.